for the lunch, and now we're going to enjoy a presentation of missions. And our guest preacher this morning, our speaker, will be Pastor Sam Choi. Since 2015, he has served as pastor of the Seoul Lutheran Church in Seoul, South Korea. His main job is serving the Korean congregation while also leading English language worship service to a smaller group that gathers on Sunday mornings before the main worship service in Korean. He also serves as director of Seoul Lutheran Theological Institute in Korea and is the principal of the Canadian Lutheran Academy, which prepares students for enrollment in stateside Lutheran high schools.
Everyone, hello everyone. My name is Songyu Choi. It's a Korean name, and also my English name is Samuel Choi. So you can call either Samuel or Sam. Either way is fine. And also so everyone is happy because we ate a delicious lunch. Yeah. But actually this is the time, it's not good time, because some people feel sleepy. So I don't mind. So you can just standing or just stretching, so I don't mind doing my presentation. So I'm very happy to introduce Mission Works in Korea. So what comes in mind when you hear about Korea, especially the South Korea, not North Korea, South Korea? So maybe someone is who knows this picture? Maybe I think it's a young generation that knows that BTS. BTS is many as made popular in the world. But I'm not a fan of the BTS. And also this is a movie, Parasite. So that movie got 4 Academy Awards. Also there is a Squid Game. It's the most popular movie in Netflix. And also is Samsung or LG or Kia and Hyundai. That is all kind in South Korea. So I want to give the basic information of the South Korea. So South Korea is a size. Minnesota is 2 times rather than South Korea. And also is the population. The South Korea is 10 times that of the Minnesota. So the population of the South Korea is 50 million. And I heard that the population of the Minnesota is maybe 5.5 million, maybe. Yeah, so, and also is a location. So South Korea is located between China and Japan. So if we see the map of the world, it is hard to find Korea because it's very small. But China is a big continent. So beside, you can find the South Korea. This is South Korea. So South Korea is composed in the 9 provinces. It's one big city. So big city means Seoul city. Seoul is a metropolitan. The population is 10 million. So South Korea is 9 provinces and 1 metropolitan city. This map is the Seoul. The Han River flows from the east to the west. So the Han River divided the north and the south. And then my church, Seoul Lutheran Church, is located here. It's the southeast side. Now I give the basic background of South Korea. So South Korea has over the 4,000 years and history. And then before the Christianity comes to Korea, so the most religion is Buddhism, and also is Confucianism, and also is folks, and also superstition. So many Koreans practice the ancestral worship. So it is because it is influenced, a big influence from the Confucianism. So that's why many Koreans practice ancestral worship. And also is Christianity. The basically is Christianity. It has 120 years. It's a Presbyterian and Methodist missionary. It came in the 1880s. So that's why we have 120 years history, Christian history. And Presbyterian and Methodist missionary, they start the hospital and Christian schools. So around 2000, the ratio of the population in Christianity is almost 25%. But before the COVID-19, the ratio a little bit decreased, it's 18 to the 20. After COVID-19, the ratio is a little bit more decreased, or almost 18% of the total population. But either way, anyways, the Christianity is not Christian, is a Korean, is a ethnic religion, is a foreign religion. But many people accept Christianity as a religion. So roughly we have 20% they have the Christianity. So there are a number of churches in South Korea, especially in Seoul. So at night you can see that around like this. See, did you see the many is a red cross? That means church. So there are so many churches in the Seoul or other big cities. And also we have good heritage from the Christianity. So every morning we have a devotion at 6 o'clock a.m. or other church has a 5:30 a.m. They have a morning devotion. But it's my church has only devotion using the online service because my members is spread so early. So it's not easy to get together in the morning. So that's why we're using the online kind of voice chatting. So we use that online service. Now, I explain on the Seoul Lutheran Church history. So we actually start 2005, October 31. So next month, so we have 18 years anniversary. This is my church building, but this building is a renting building, so we use the 3 floors. The second floor is we use the Canaan Lutheran Academy, And the third floor is a sanctuary. The fourth floor is a fellowship area. So, Reverend Young Kim, he started this church 2005. So the purpose is to outreach to the China and North Korea. So that's why we started 2005. So basically, it's Young Kim. So he is a citizen of the United States, and then maybe he lived in America over the 35 years, and then he returned to Korea, and he started the congregation. So he is he's kind of founder. And also, I already mentioned that the Christianity in South Korea started in the 1880s. So we have a long time ago we started Christianity. So that means many people know that Christianity as the Presbyterian and Methodist, something like that. But many people does not know that the Lutheranism, even though some Christians regard the Lutheranism as the heresy, because they never heard about that. So that's why we have some special mission way. It's kind of so we are helping the parents who wants to educate their kids in the United States. So that's why we are with the new families as that tools. So within the new families through a study abroad program in the United States, that is one of the mission ways. Since 2005 until now, so we keep that program. And also is my member of the congregation is 9%. They have already experienced their kids to the United States. So my congregation also is those parents. Yeah. So the purpose we use that Canaan Lutheran Academy. So next slide I will explain more about the Canaan Lutheran Academy. And also in order to advertise our program, so we are participating in the study of the Expo every year from the 2019. So this is kind of an example of a picture of the Expo. And also the other way of the mission kind of evangelize. We set up the free English class on every Wednesday. So he's Douglas Tabor. So he came from the Michigan. So he's a retired salesman. And he volunteered to teach the English. So that's why he came to Korea, and he's helping the English class. So that is another opportunity to meet the new family, so who wants to study the English conversation. And this is the Canaan Lutheran Academy. It's our program is to help the Korean student adopt to American high school, because many Korean students, the English is not first language, it's second language. So they settle down for the American education system. So we are having the 6 months. The period from the February to July, because the high school is start in middle of the August or is in the September. So that's why we study during the 6 months from the January to the July. And also the subject is the English, and also the math, social science, and the Bible history and catechism. So 9:30 a.m. to the 4:30 p.m. So it kind of is similar to the school system. And then Jessica, so he's a member of my church, and he's in charge of this program. And also is I studied the Baptist seminary for 3 years in 2008 to 2011. So you know that Jeff Morset he's John Morset's son. So he's my classmate in seminary. So and then I returned 2015. And then I'm also serving the Lutheran Church, and also is 2016 in June. So we made some vision of the Lutheran Church, and then just in the targeting for the each congregation. In 9 provinces in Seoul. So Seoul Church already located in the Seoul. So we need more pastors. And also it's 2017 April. So we start a new congregation. It's Anyang Hope Church. It's a Gyeonggi province. And then the Pastor Jacob Kim is he trained through the Seoul Lutheran Theological Institute. So basically, he was one of the elders in Seoul Lutheran Church, and he became a pastor, and then he started a new congregation 2017. So we already started in another province. And also in 2018, as Pastor Yong Kim retired. So in Korea tradition, the pastor age is 70. So most pastor is retired. But in America, it's a different situation. But that is a Korean customs. So as you know that 2020. Is it work? Oh, it's out of battery. Sorry for that. So as you know that 2020 is February to 2023. So it's 3 years, 2 months with the COVID-19 period. And also is Korean government they exercise a very strong quarantine period about the COVID-19. So that's why many church has no face-to-face worship service. They only around to the online service. So that is a very damage to the church. Unfortunately. And also in 2021, in May, the Pastor David Choi came to as a assistant pastor. So originally he is a Korean Chinese. So he is So years as a training him in to evangelize Korean Chinese in South Korea, also in China. So he, now he is preparing Korean Chinese congregation. And then this is last year, in December, so he is installed a central pastor. And also this year, in last June, Seoul Lutheran Church host CELC 2023 in Olympic Park Hotel. So you know that CELC meeting is CELC is a Conservative Evangelical Conference. So that meeting is held every 3 years. So all around the Lutheran pastors and the missionaries, they come together as they have a meeting together. So this is a conference. This is my church is the choir at the time, and then this is American attendance choir. The backside there with Thomas Hine over there. And also is a road surfer, and this is a free time. And this is a video. It's not. Okay. This is my church inside. So last day is all attendance of CES visited my church, and then somebody start a hymn. So they sing together, and then with the all around people, all around the pastors and missionaries. So it is very amazing, and also this is impressed to me. I never thought about it. So it is a very interesting thing. And last slide is a prayer request. So I wanna meet new families with the CLA program, but around the 2010, so many Korean parents want their kids to study in America. This kind of trend booms, but now the trend is changed. So not many people, but still there is some parents who wants to their kids to study in America, but the number is very decreased. So anyway, but still there are some possibilities. So I will meet new family through the CLA program. And also recover the number of attendance on Sunday. So I already mentioned that the Korean government is strongly the COVID-19 quarantine as a policy. So some members are opposed to keep the online service, not in the in-person service. So that's why some people also want to keep on in the online service, so they don't want to come to the church. So I and my elders encourage them to attend the service at church. So I hope the recovery. So before COVID-19, the average attendance number is 70 or to the 80. But after COVID-19, the average attendance is about 50. So I encourage them, and then they come to church, and they will face to face, and also we need the fellowship in faith. So another, so hopefully is start a new population of the Korean Chinese in Korea. And also is we have a vision that each congregation in every 9 provinces So we need more pastors to establish the congregation in each province. And also, this is a long-term vision. So we want to make international school. So from the grade 1st to the 12th. So that is a long vision. And then we can education, and then we can make the Christian people also. So in the history of the Korea, the Presbyterian and Methodist, they started evangelize using through the hospital and the education system. So I think the education system is more popular in Korea. So to evangelize with non-believers. So that is a great test. So do you have any question about the Korea side, Korean missions? Yes.
Earlier in the presentation, the COVID years, 2020 to 23, did they force shut down for 3
The
years?
church? No. So, yeah, sometimes there is a strong quarantine parish, so they not allowed to the face-to-face worship service, but sometimes they allow in a limited number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that is on and off. So, and after the Korean people, they keep their rules. So they just follow the government's policy. So it's very hard to keep the face-to-face worship service. Yeah. So that's why the number of attendance is decreased.
Just, families that send their children to America for education, are they looked down on or anything, or is that something that's more looked at like it's an honor?
That is just an option. So some parents they send their children study abroad, or they just study in Korea. But I mentioned about before is around 2010. Most parents want their kids to study abroad, especially in America. But the trend is not changing. Yeah, so.
If you said it, I missed it. How many students in the school?
Is Canada Academy. The number now is there is 1 or 2, but is before that is there is 50, 20. Yeah, so there are actually degrees. So.
These families, they go from Korea to the ELS Wells schools?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So most of them go to like Bethany and things like that, and they go to like families that are part of the congregation? Is that what?
Yeah, so their kids usually go to the wellness in the high school, and then their families, they go to my church in Korea. Because in Korea, there is no wellness church. So only the ELS church. So, yeah. Is there any question about mission in South Korea?
Do you have a lot of opposition? Is there any, what is your main opposition? Is it from other religions or the government?
Opposition, she said.
Main opposition.
What's your main opposition to Christianity?
Mm, yeah, I think it's maybe 70s, 80s. Korea is a developed country, so our economy is increased, they develop. At that time, is many people is go to the church, but now is we are a little bit is not developed country, so many people does not interested in the religion, so they are just so the number of atheists is increased rapidly. So that's why I think that is a major objection. And also through the COVID-19, the people is familiar with the stay home quite alone, so they don't want to go to the church or any engage other people. So the trend is changed. So that is maybe I think is a second objection. But the government and also is other religion does not matter, does not care. The other religion same situation. The number of the religion people is decreased.
All right, if there's no other questions then, let's give a round of applause.
Thank you for listening.
And we also have the very distinguished looking gentleman, who's much taller than the rest of us, to fill us in on the rest of the mission work, also update on different things that's going on in the Synod, and so we look forward to hearing him. And he is our evangelism counselor. Is that your correct name?
Administrator for the Board for World Outreach.
Okay.
Figure out how to get this from here.
Yeah,
Here.
well, it usually does.
So unplug it. Let me-
There you go. You got it.
Oh,
See,
was it?
that's just perfect.
It was there.
Now it's searching you. There it goes. Just gotta give it time. There we go. All right.
Well, first of all, thank you for that introduction about, what was it, distinguished? Thank you. I don't know that I've ever been called distinguished. So that's a real honor and a real privilege. Just to show you how distinguished I am, I told the ladies when I got a name tag, I said they always fall off. I want you to notice it's still on, because it normally falls off. So I'm Pastor Thomas Hine. I'm the administrator for the Board for World Outreach. And that really means that what I do is I carry out any instructions and decisions that the board makes. We have 9 men on that board, divided into 3 committees dealing with different geographical areas of the world where we have mission work. So we have one committee of 3 members that works with South America, one committee of 3 members that works with our work in Europe, and then a third committee of 3 men that works with our work in Asia, which includes South Korea, India, and now Australia as well. And so what my job is primarily to communicate with the fields and whatever decisions the board makes, for me to work with those fields and to carry out the decisions that the Board for World Outreach makes. So that's my role as administrator. So I'm going to walk you through our different fields of work and tell you what's happening in those different fields. I was hoping. There we go. Starting off, all of you should have a cross-stitch brochure. And this basically summarizes that cross-stitch brochure that you have. It talks about the projects for 2023. And we have an advisory group that looks at the different needs in world missions in all of our fields, and then they prioritize some. And for example, this year we're looking at hoping to raise a total of $35,000 from the various different mission rallies that we have and the cross-stitch organizations, the Ladies' Aids, $20,000 to provide orphan support in India. That will primarily go for providing food, and they get one new set of clothes every year. When we get to the orphanages, you'll see what that situation looks like, and I'll explain more about the food and the clothing. Then we have the India Orphan Vocational Scholarships. When the children get to be a certain age, they're no longer eligible to stay in the orphanages, usually around age 16, 17, and then they will be released from the orphanage and they will be responsible for going out into the world, maybe age 18, going out into the world and supporting themselves. Especially for young women, this has always been traditionally a problem. And so these scholarships provide tuition for them to go to vocational training schools. Most of the young women will train to be nurses. For young men coming out of the orphanages, we tend to see them in 2 areas where they will also get vocational training. One of them is, again, as nurses, male nurses. The other one is probably mechanics. And so that allows them to go out into the world and to make a living for themselves instead of just being out on the street and dependent upon begging or some other way of providing for themselves. Then you see food for the jungle schools. We're going to look at the jungle schools a little bit in South America, and there too, there are food programs. You know, when you think about the Amazon, you think, boy, there's vegetation growing all over, there must be tropical fruits, there must be food galore, different kinds of animals, fish. You would think that nutrition would not be a problem, but it actually is. They are very much on a sustenance diet, barely able to make it from day to day. Some of the villages that we're at are not on the river, so there's not easy access to fish. They might have to go out into the jungle and to hunt wild pigs, for example, or some kind of wild bird. Sometimes even, for example, monkey. And they will hunt monkeys, and then they will have that for the food that they eat. On occasions, large snakes. But they're out looking for some kind of meat for sustenance and looking for really edible vegetation that they can eat. Not all of it is. So we need to provide food for the jungle schools. Then we have 2 projects for home mission building in Texas this year for a total of $5,000. I think there are more details here in your brochure. It mentions that King of Grace in Waukon, Iowa needs mobile audiovisual equipment, and Hope in Farmington purchasing podcast equipment and plans for a special outreach event. That number is actually wrong. If you look in your brochure, it's 44,000. My numbers are off a little bit. They were raised. I'm sorry, those are old numbers and are big. But in your folder, you see it's a total of $44,000 that they are hoping to raise. On occasion, we actually raise more than the target, and then there are always additional projects. We have a meeting and we allocate it to other world mission, usually world mission projects, for the additional money that is raised. You should be getting the cross-stitch newsletter. Those are generally sent out to the pastors, and pastors can share that with their congregations. You have an example of the latest one, Where Does Our Money Go? It actually talks about Waukon, Iowa, with the audiovisual equipment. And you should have a list also of 2023 prayer partners These are the workers in our different mission fields, and prayers for them. If you have some kind of a prayer chain, or in your church, your ladies group, some kind of a prayer group, this gives you an idea of people to pray for. I'm going to start in Peru. Peru is our oldest field. We've been there almost 50 years, actually I guess a little bit over 50 years. And looking first of all at what has become their world mission field. And so the Peru Church is carrying on work in the jungle among tribal people. This particular tribal group, they're called the Shayahuita, or also known as the Shawi people. It is a tribal people. They would really be as distinct from the Peruvians as, for example, the Navajo or the Apache are from typical, more European North Americans. The Shawi would be just as distinct from the Peruvians as those groups that I mentioned are distinct from us. They are their own tribal people. And among the Shawi, they're primarily in a village called Luis Cherry. I have this picture here because you see two kids swimming in that pool of water. That pool of water is actually a pool of water from which they would draw their water for cooking or for washing cooking utensils, and it's very polluted. In fact, some of that water is also water where human refuse has gotten into that water. They're swimming in it. They would go down and take their big kettles and use that to boil the water when they're cooking. Well, we had a donor who wanted to help out this particular village, and so he offered money to begin to start a water purification process. And here you see there are actually about 6 of those big tubs that you see with sand and gravel, and they found the source of the water before it gets all polluted. They run that water down to this water purification area that has just been inaugurated, I think this last July, and it runs through this whole filtration system. After it gets through the filtration system, it goes into a large bladder where there are a bunch of bacteria that then can get rid of the bad bacteria, purify the water, and then it is pumped by solar pumps up to a higher elevation so that it can actually feed the entire village. Every village now has its own sink and faucet and plumbing with clean water, clean drinkable water, and the health of the people is vastly improving because they've had so many health problems because of the impure water. Here you see, for example, there on the lower level is where that filtration system is in the lower building, and up on top of that hill is where the storage tank is that then gives it enough pressure to feed down into all of the villages. It also feeds the school. And the school now has indoor plumbing, where before it was just outdoor plumbing with basically a hole in the ground with a little shed around it. Now they have indoor plumbing, flush toilets, water faucets for washing hands, washing dishes, drinking water. It was a big day of celebration when they finally inaugurated that water purification plant. There were dances. It's interesting, if you look closely, you'll see that the young men are wearing tennis shoes. Underneath those grass skirts, they have cut off blue jean shorts. But that was the big celebration. When they had this inauguration of the water plant, there were 4 people that came from another village. They actually walked from, I think it was a 3-hour walk on a previous occasion just to see what this water plant was. We had visitors from, I think it was 7 hours away, walking through the jungle on footpaths. But here at this inauguration, the man on the far right, man in the center with the kind of light blue shorts, man on the left with the gray shirt, not the one in the middle, the man with the gray shirt, and his wife and daughter, she's wearing that red top. They walked from 3 hours away through on a footpath through the village to come and to meet some of the people that were representative. The man with the little black shoulder thing with the long sleeve blue shirt, the shorter man with the gray shirt on the left, those are 2 Peruvian pastors who regularly visit this village, and they wanted to meet with them. They said, well, we've seen this water project, but the Shawi pastor in that village also preached a sermon. They said, we've never heard anything like this before. Can you come to our village and share that gospel message? So through this project of bringing clean water to the Shawi village in Louis Terry, they have reached out to a number of people in neighboring villages, and those look like places where we are looking forward to in the future going and visiting there and seeing if we can begin some new mission work in those villages. It's actually quite an exciting prospect to realize that through this, there are other villages now where we can reach out. Very difficult to reach out from village to village, because the white man, I'm just going to put it that way, the white man has there's this myth about him coming into the village to steal the children and to take them away. And there was an example of a young man who actually went into the next village without proper introductions, without proper sponsorship, and they killed him because they were afraid of what he was going to do to their children. So in order for us to go to another village, you've got to have someone who's reliable from a neighboring village that those people know to make introductions and to bring him along and to assure them this man is not here to steal your children. And so moving from village to village is a challenge, and this is something that is giving us a great opportunity to spread out into multiple villages. We are in a couple of other villages. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the Louis Terry School. They actually have a grade school and a high school. This is what it's talking about with that project for Cross Stitch when we talk about food for the jungle schools. The government provides jungle schools, the public schools, with food. If we don't offer a food program, and it's really important for the nutrition of the children because there's so much malnutrition, if we don't provide food in a jungle school, the parents will send their kids to a public school, and when we lose that opportunity then to have Christian education, which is what we have in our jungle schools right now. We have an elementary school and a high school. But that is what it looks like after a number of years, because it doesn't mean that there are no kids going to school anymore, but I just want to show you the damage. If we could do a close-up of the concrete, you would see the concrete completely breaking down. You see some of the boards above that brickwork and how they're opening up and how they're actually rotting because it's so humid. And there are so many kinds of pests that will chew up the wood that these schools constantly need renovation and rebuilding. And the desks, for example, if you're not careful, they start to get dry rot in the desk just because of all of the moisture and the harsh environment in which those schools exist. So I just wanted you to see a picture of how those schools, even though you've got a bunch of kids studying there, those schools need attention quite regularly. Then there's another city, another village nearby called Taiwan, and this is that village. That one does not have a water purification project. You get there by driving on a road for 45 minutes in a motorcycle scooter or a motorcycle taxi, then 45 minutes walking on a footpath to get to that village. The man on, let's see, where is he? You see the man in the red shirt. He is the chief of the village. The man standing behind him with the blue t-shirt is kind of a co-village chief. And he was coming back from the road where he was walking back to the village, and he came across I think it was about either 12-foot or 20-foot anaconda crossing the footpath, making its way to the village. Now, they wouldn't attack an adult, but they'll attack some of the livestock in the village, and chickens, for example, or small pigs, and there's a danger to the children. So he held off that anaconda, a big snake about that big around and about 20 feet long, held it off with a stick until someone saw him, came out with a machete, and he hacked at it with the machete. Thought he had killed it, went back to the village elders to say, let's go out, we'll have some meat for the village. They would butcher the snake and eat it. He came back and it was gone. So he thought he had killed it, but it was gone. And now, so now where is it? Is it coming into the village? Did it escape? Did it flee? Who knows? But he was quite a hero. And again, it's this man right here in the blue shirt. His name was Pedro. That village, by the way, is built in an area that is owned technically by another village called Paranar. It has a city with paved streets. They've got their own government. And even though it's far away from that village, they said, we're on our land. And there are all kinds of laws in Peru about how the tribal people can move and they can establish themselves on certain vacant land, and it can become theirs. Well, this village of Paranari said, "You're on our land." And they came out, and that same man in the blue t-shirt that I pointed out, when he came to the dedication of that water plant, he had all kinds of bruises and cuts from being beaten up by some of the people from that village. We're trying to help this village of Taiwan establish their legal ownership of that property, and they should have it, but you've got to go through a process. But a wonderful village of people with both of those two men, the one in the red shirt, more forward, the one behind him in the blue, those are pastors sharing the gospel with those people. Another village called Nueva Chasuta, it's completely in the opposite direction on a different river system. And you travel in a small, narrow, flat-bottom boat for about 3.5 hours to get upstream. You visit there and then about another 3 hours back downstream to get back. But a wonderful village, beautiful people. The Sunday that we were, it wasn't a Sunday, I'm sorry, a day during the week, but we were there. And you'll see 4 small children in the arms of their mothers. 2 on the right, 1 in the center, 1 on the left. All 4 of those children, the parents were waiting for us to come in order that they might be baptized. And so on that day, we had 4 baptisms that we celebrated. Then we leave the jungle area and we go up about 9,000 feet elevation to a city called Cajamarca up in the Andes Mountains. This is actually a World Heritage Site where a historic event happened between the Spaniards and the Inca. And maybe I won't take the time now to describe what happened. Fascinating place, World Heritage Site. This is where Pastor Segundo Gutierrez, and he is way in the back. You saw him actually when I pointed out those 2 Peruvian men in the village, the one with the gray shirt. He's the president of the Synod. This is where his family is from. And there's a congregation meeting up in that city. It's about 250,000 population. But it's up at about 9,000 feet. His family gathers, some neighbors from there, and he goes up there about maybe once a month. He has about an 8-hour drive through the mountains back and forth to get up to the city, where we have a mission that wants to have a chapel. They're waiting for a chapel. But it's a group of about 15 to 20 people that are gathering and meeting. Then there's another city down on the coast. It used to be a big fish processing village where fishing fleets from all over South America would come to the city. They would process the catch of fish that these commercial boats would bring in. That's a city of about 3 million people. It is north of the capital city of Lima, right on the coast. They've moved the fish processing plants away because the smell was quite overpowering, but it still is a significant city. That's where his congregation is. Those are members of his congregation. It is probably, right now, you would say it's the strongest, healthiest congregation of all of our missions in South America. Wonderful congregation, doing a lot of outreach in their community. In the city of Lima, we have Martin Lutero School, and there you can see some of the kids. Some of them are still wearing masks from COVID times, but they have a bunch of classrooms. That's one of the classrooms. And this is the school building that they meet in, the Martin Lutero School. There's not a congregation connected with it. We're hoping to actually build a congregation. It's a very popular school. We're hoping to build a congregation from parents, grandparents whose kids attend this school. That school is very popular. They're at maximum capacity of about 200 students. If you look at the top of the roof line, you'll see all these steel bars sticking up, which we call rebar or reinforcement bar, because it's there so that they can add another level onto the school, a 3rd floor. And if they do that, they can add another 50 students to their school. That school is a tremendous outreach tool, and one that we're hoping, in fact, we have money for building that next level, but we have to wait until the school year is over because you can't construct while kids are in classes. So that construction will probably begin possibly in December or January. Remember, they're in the southern hemisphere, so their summer and winter are switched, their school year is switched. So their summer vacation actually is December, January, February. That's when they will be building the next level on that school. Then we move to Chile, And there are two congregations in Chile. We've been there about 25 years. This is in a city called Linares. The name of the congregation is Unidos en la Fe, which is translated United in the Faith. It is the congregation in Linares, which is about 3.5 hours south of the capital city of Santiago. It has gone through some real challenges, but it looks like it's on the mend. And Pastor Mario Galvez has done really good work down there in reaching out to additional people. He said he's got about 3 more people, and I just talked to him the other day. He said I've got about 3 people in instruction class ready to become members. Wonderful news. And then in Santiago, the capital city, is a congregation called Familia de Dios, which means family of God. And there he's got a congregation of maybe about 25 to 30 people. And again, a number of people in adult instruction class, so he's always got people coming in wanting to learn about the Christian faith, and he has a wonderful opportunity to share it with them and to teach them. Then we're going to go to the Europe field. So we've covered South America, now we're going to go to the work in Europe, primarily Central Europe and Eastern Europe. All of these churches came out of when they were part of, or the countries were part of the whole Soviet Union, and when the wall fell and the Soviet Union broke apart, some of these countries once again regained their independence, and the church, which had been kind of suppressed, was able to come forth again. So in the country of Latvia, you see a red dot there. If you can make out the Europe map, there's a red dot there. That's Latvia. 2 congregations. We actually have about 4 different places where worship is taking place. But 2 of the major ones are in the city of Ozolnieki. You see the congregation there on the left. Another congregation called Tekova. That is just a small portion of the congregation, but they were there for a baptism. So Pastor Uldis Fandeyevs on the left, Pastor Ilars Prume on the right with his congregation. There are 2 other congregations, one in Jelgava. I don't have a picture of the Jelgava congregation, and then another man who's meeting, I forget the name of the village, it's primarily his family, but we're hoping to actually expand that work there. We have some seminary students in Latvia. The man on the left is a man from India. He was actually raised, I think, as a Pentecostal Christian. But he moved to Latvia to go to medical school. A lot of Indians come to Latvia for university, engineering, and medical school. So he came to medical school, met the daughter of one of the pastors, this pastor who actually has a home church with his family, met her, went through instruction class, and he said, not only do I want to confess being a Lutheran, I want to be a Lutheran pastor. And so he's got his medical license, he's a practicing medical doctor. In the meantime, he's in the seminary program, and the plan will be that somewhere down the road, a couple of years when he finishes his seminary studies, is that he will be bivocational. He will support himself with his medical practice while he reaches out to people as a pastor. And since there are a lot of Indians in Latvia, he has people that he knows already that he can share the gospel with. And so he'll be able to go out and to carry on mission work as an Indian pastor in Latvia, reaching out to Indians who have come to Latvia for university studies. On the right, you see the most recent seminary class when I was there in, when was that, September, and taught for a number of days as a number of men. The 2 men who are seminary students, this man right here, you can't see him very well. I apologize for the blurry pictures. This man here just got his PhD in philosophy, talking about Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher, I think maybe even a theologian, and he's teaching in the university, but he is very dedicated to his church and to wanting to serve the Lord as a pastor. This man here, his name is Juris Mendievs, and he's the CEO of a plywood company that sends plywood all around the world for fine quality furniture. He's the president of his congregation, and he too is studying because when he enters retirement, he hopes to go into a little bit of an early retirement. He also wants to be able to be a pastor and an evangelist. So he's in the program. There's another man who also is a doctor. He's a friend of this guy on the left. But he was taking examinations for, I think, some kind of licensing for being a medical doctor. He was not able to attend our classes, so I haven't met him yet. In the Czech Republic, that's the second country we're going to talk about. Czech Republic is regarded as the most atheist country in all of Europe. There's a whole history behind that. If you've got questions about it, I can fill you in on that again in the question and answer session. But it's a very tough country to work in. We have a school there, the Martin Luther School in Pilsen. On the left, you see the principal. On the far left, he, by his own confession, is agnostic, maybe even atheist, which is predominant in Czech Republic. But to his right, the man with kind of the blue and black check shirt, that's Martin Vershecki, and he's a pastor, an ordained pastor, and kind of manages the whole school program. He also is working with the congregation there, but we're facing some real challenges with the congregation. We just had a pastor that was serving more on a long-term basis that has resigned from the ministry, and so Martin now is picking up a lot of that work, and we're trying to figure out the best way to serve that congregation. You can see some of the kids in the classroom, and there's a kindergarten class at Martin Luther School. There are about 300 or 300 plus students enrolled in that school. We have the opportunity to teach the Christian religion to them. Parents know that. Their children are educated. And we always watch to see, well, can we reach the parents? And as those kids get older, will they come back as adults? And we do see that. But it's a tough and challenging place to work. The Gift of Life program in Ukraine, you may be familiar with. This is not really a typical church type of ministry or outreach. It's more humanitarian outreach. It came into being after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. If you remember that back in the 80s, the radiation cloud passed over Ukraine, actually went up all the way up to Sweden. But a lot of the mothers, their immune system suffered permanently, and they passed on that weakened immune system to their children. So there are a lot of medical needs, dental needs of the children. So that's the mobile clinic on wheels. On the right, you see the woman in the blue with the red sleeve. She is a deaconess, and she's a member of the Ukrainian Lutheran Church. So whenever these buses go from village to village, she will be there. You can actually see a flannel board in the background, and she will use that flannel board with the flannel characters, and she will tell Bible stories and reach out to the children, because primarily this was set up to serve the children. Their mothers bring them, their fathers bring them, they share Christian literature as they go from village to village. The picture on the left is just to show some of the damage now from the war going on with Russia. And you can see the facilities completely bombed out. And some of those would be homes, some of them would be businesses. There are a number of people that have been displaced from their homes. And so we're also now serving not only the children, but also the adults as well, with both the medical clinic and with the dental clinic. There you see one of the doctors, of two doctors on the left, medical doctors. On the right, you see the dental clinic. There are normally 3 dentists. With the war effort, all of those men under age 60 are eligible to be drafted into the Ukrainian military. And so we've had a complete turnover of dentists because they've all gone. We have mechanics who drive the motor coaches from place to place so far. I think we've lost one of them. The other one we keep, and they do so much maintenance work. They're very critical to the mission, but we're always in danger of losing men being drafted into the military for the war with Russia. We do have the pregnancy counseling centers. In the lower or on the right, you see the 6 counselors that had been engaged with the war in Ukraine. Some of them have left and gone to other countries for reasons of safety and just getting out of a war-torn nation. But we still have a number of them still serving. On the left, you see what normally would be a counseling center teaching women and young fathers how to care for their children is now being used to get out humanitarian support for the population in general that come there, but they also always have Bible studies in connection with that, and pastors leading those Bible studies. I think in the far back, that tallest man is a pastor I think you can see him there, and they will have Bible studies, and they've had a number of people that, having gone here for humanitarian aid, have listened to the Bible studies, and now have become instructed in the Christian faith. So again, a wonderful mission opportunity. This is Nick and Carrie Laper. They're the current directors of the work over there, but they're planning on retiring next June, less than a year from now. And we're in the process of recruiting another couple to replace them. We're still waiting to see whether or not that couple will accept the invitation, but it's very important to have the North American administrators overseeing all that work in Ukraine. Then we go to Korea. Pastor Choi has already explained something about the work, but here are the pictures. You can see Pastor Choi on the left. In the center is Pastor J.W. Kim serving at that Anyang congregation. On the far right is Pastor David Choi, who's over there now also, and he's doing some work with Pastor J.W. Kim, together with there you see Pastor Choi with his new bride, Ashley. She has been in other programs. I think she was in China with something called the Friends Network. On the right here, it's going to be, I'm sure you can't see it, but there are a number of people here. This is Doug Tabor that Pastor Choi mentioned. He's over there as a layman, and his whole purpose is to just find people, make friends with them, and then as he has opportunity to share the gospel. And one of the things that they're doing is they are also having English classes, and so he will just converse with people in English. Here you see a bunch of people that he has met, and then he'll share his faith and introduce them to the Christian faith and confess his own personal Christian faith. Ashley, David's wife, she also does some of that work. And so they're working with J.W. Kim in Anyang. And I think they may be doing some work. They've been somewhere close to Seoul Lutheran Church as well. So this is a way of using lay people then to do outreach. Pastor Troy already covered that. I just wanted to introduce you and show you some pictures of what's being done. Then we get to India. India is an interesting mission field because there are over 22,000 members in that church in India, called LMSI, Lutheran Mission of Salvation India. 22,000 members. Our entire ELS has about 19. So this church body that we're working with as a mission field is actually larger than our own synod. You've got 22,000 members being served by about 14 pastors. We've got about 19,000 being served by, 110 maybe? Well, 110 pastors. They've got 14 pastors, not 110, serving 22,000 people. And so they're always looking at seminary training. Here are the pastors in the city of Hyderabad. I should have put red dots up on the map. It's almost smack dab in the middle of the country, Hyderabad. I think it's the 4th largest city in India. So there you see in the very back row, the man with the check shirt is Solomon Amini. He's the president of that Hyderabad district. His son is to his left, it's on our right. And so the two of them really oversee that. And then you see 5 other men that are pastors. And then they supervise about 110, maybe a little bit more, gospel workers who are basically evangelists, serving as pastors under their supervision because there are not enough pastors, but also looking again at a number of them being in a seminary program. And when they get through the seminary program, immediately the next batch comes in for seminary training. This is the other district called Rajamundry. The man on the far right is the president of that district. And you see there 6 men, including his brother, 6 men that are serving, a much larger district with more gospel workers, more congregations, and a wonderful group of men to work with. He's a wonderful president of that district. They're over by the Bay of Bengal, which would be along that right-hand edge of the Indian subcontinent. Here are then the seminary students gathered for a joint session. Normally they would have separate sessions, but when we come over to visit, they always have a joint session. Interesting classes that I've had with them. Again, in the question and answer session, if we have time, I'll go through some of the things that we've covered in the seminary program. And interesting things from the standpoint of working in an entirely different culture. But we'll get to that if we have a chance. But there you see the seminary students gathered. In the front row seated are the three men that do the teaching, Kalyan Kalapali on the right, Solomon Mamadi in the center, and Simeon Mamadi, his son, on the right, that do the teaching, as well as when we go over there, then we teach as well. You know about the orphan homes in India. Those pictures on the left show an orphan home where the monkeys would break through the roof and cause all kinds of problems. They just tear it apart. And the monkeys can be quite vicious. And on the right, you see a new roof that's put on it. It's hard to see in the pictures, and it's a fiberglass roof. But even at that, the monkeys come and jump on it and try to destroy it just to get inside. So it's a little bit dangerous for the kids. On the lower right, you actually see the man in the white shirt on the far left. He's one of the pastors. His wife is right next to him. They run that particular children's home. But there are quite a number of children's homes, and you're seeing one of them here. I'm sorry, I thought I had some other pictures. I guess that was on a different slide presentation. So before we get to Australia, so you've heard about the scholarship program. The children in those children's homes, they have a trunk, a steel trunk about this wide, about this deep, about this high, and all their earthly belongings are in that trunk. Every year they get one new set of clothes. And that's provided by you through the cross-stitch program. One new set of clothes. There's a food program as well. And the food program, we doubled the portion of the amount of chicken that they get per week. Instead of one serving per week, it went up to 2, because they would close the orphanages down if we didn't provide more protein. And I think that they may be once again coming and looking for more. So your contributions in support of that food program, the clothing for those orphans, is really important. There are also 2 schools operating in India. I'm sorry, for the sake of time, I didn't include those pictures, but those school programs as well. And then the latest addition has been to our Asia Field, one congregation in Brisbane, Australia. They've asked to come under our board for mentoring and direction and to help them in doing their outreach in Australia, an entire continent, and yet we have one congregation there. There's one other congregation that's loosely affiliated with the Wisconsin Synod, but that pastor is about to retire, so we're looking at opportunities to share the gospel in Australia. This is the congregation that's gathered in Brisbane that we are now working with. And then I just want to mention briefly the 2023 CELC conference that Pastor Choi talked about. There is a theological commission as part of that conference, the Global Theological Education Commission, and they have set forth a curriculum called Shepherds Under Christ, the training of confessional Lutheran pastors in our time and in our places. The purpose of that document that they have prepared is to try to get some uniformity in all of our different world seminary programs, so that you're having a common curriculum that those pastors are going through, making sure you've covered all of the standard areas of theology that all of us as pastors have received in our seminary training. So we're hoping that that document, Shepherds Under Christ, will be used as we evaluate and as we refine our whole seminary training program. Very important document. I just want to mention to you our 2 newsletters. You have the Mission News and Helping Hands newsletter on the left. That covers Peru, Chile, India, Korea, and it will now pick up Australia as well. We do pick up the other European missions, but the European missions are primarily covered in a different newsletter called Thoughts of Faith that covers the work in Latvia, Czech Republic, and Ukraine. And then Pastor Steve Peterson, my predecessor, currently has and I don't know if it's going on as emails, it's also available on the website, called World Mission Souvenirs. And he reflects on his many years as World Mission Administrator, talking about different souvenirs he's collected over the years, but always tying them back into, this isn't just a souvenir. There's a story with this. A story about my experience that I had in working with World Mission, maybe the people that I met, the kind of work that was going on. So you can go to the ELS website and find souvenirs, and maybe you're already getting it in the form of an email. So that's something to follow up on. And then lastly, we want to thank you for your support. Two things to always keep in mind. You have been blessed by God, but always with the purpose that you might also be a blessing. And you look at those Bible passages. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ. And then to be a blessing, I love this passage. You're a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of Him who has called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. Richly blessed, in order that you might be a blessing. Thank you for all of your support. So, if you have questions, I don't know how we're doing on time.
We have
You have 10 minutes.
I have 10 minutes. We'll still have 10 minutes for questions. And if you don't have any, I've got some stories to tell. So first I want to answer your question. Any questions you have? Not everybody at once, please. No, I'm not saying the hands, so let me fill you in on some interesting stories from some things. I mentioned this congregation high up in the Andes Mountain, 9,000 feet elevation, Cajamarca. That was a place when the Spanish conquistadors came into South America. They called for a meeting with the Inca chieftain. And the Inca chieftain thought, oh, they're going to receive me and all of my other chiefs under me and all of our people to welcome us. This will be a wonderful welcoming ceremony. They dressed up in all of their ceremonial garb. And they came to the city of Cajamarca. And there was an ambush waiting for them. And so the Spaniard conquistadores killed most of the other chiefs that came with the main chief. And the head chief, they threw him into jail, if you will. And they said to him, we haven't killed you, because the reason they had come over to the New World was to look for gold. And if you look back at the back of the church here, you've got those blue curtains, or those blue room dividers that come across, and the brown ones up here. So it's a fairly, well, you look at the area, you see the 3 tables back there. That was the area of a room where they said, if you fill that room with gold from ceiling to floor, and you pay that ransom, we'll let you go. And the Incas had so much gold that he filled the room from floor to ceiling. Again, you can give the dimensions back there before you go all the way back to where the other tables are. Filled it with gold. They estimated the value of it. It was over $1 billion in today's money. Just filled with gold. So he said, here's the gold. And my ransom has been paid. And there was another room about the same size behind it. And if you go to Cajamarca today, to the village square, you'll see monuments to this event. And you can actually walk maybe about 100 yards off the village square, and you'll see the ransom room is still preserved to this day. So the ransom room was filled with gold. Another one behind it, they said, oh, but now you have to fill that one with silver. And so he had all those people, they filled it with silver. So a room filled with gold, a room filled with silver. So the ransom's been paid. They said, yes, it has. Now we're going to execute you.
Oh.
He said, but it can either be slow and painful, or it can be quick. He said, what do I have to do for it to be quick? They said, you have to be baptized. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, you have to be baptized. I don't remember what the long, slow one was. The quick one is where they would have a cord called a garrote. If you've ever seen Godfather movies, it's where they put it around the guy and you yank it and you immediately strangle the guy and kill him. They said that's the way we'll do it for you if you want the quick death. But you have to be baptized. He said, okay, I'll be baptized. He said, well, you have to take a Christian name. So what name do you want to take? He was very sly about this. He said, I want to take the name of this general who has come in here and made me try to ransom my own life. I want you to give me his name and then kill me. And they did. And also World Heritage church's sake because of the atrocity that took place. It's an interesting thought when you think about those ransom rooms, and I remember thinking of, I think it's a passage from one of Peter's epistles where he says, "You weren't redeemed with perishable things like gold and silver, but with the precious blood of the Lamb, the one who is without spot or blemish." And here in this city, where this fantastic fortune was paid in gold and silver, it could not save that man's life. And yet, our lives are saved by the blood of Christ. And I hope we can bring that message. I showed you them gathering in that living room, that they hope to have a chapel. And we hope that one day, it would be wonderful to call it the True Ransom Room Lutheran Church. Wouldn't that be something? The True Ransom Room Lutheran Church, and to talk about the one ransom that pays for all of our sins. I think that's a wonderful World Heritage Site that people visit from all over the world. Wonderful opportunity. We'll see whether or not it happens. We'll see if we can raise that money for that chapel and get that chapel built. Questions? We'll try to wait another 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Questions? There was another story I was going to tell. What one was that? Which one was that? I think it had to do with India. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
When you go around and you visit all of these places,
Mm-hmm.
do you actually take the trips, like when you're talking about you're on a rickshaw kind of a thing, or you're walking through, you actually do that then?
We do a lot of things. I won't tell you about the food we eat.
Oh,
Or don't the food that we eat. I will try just about anything. The people that I go with sometimes will not. But I will try anything. And the reason you do that is because they are offering you what they consider food for a guest. And if you don't eat it, it can be very insulting to them. And I always make a point of eating what's offered, or at least trying it. And it's been interesting. But for example, in India, the last time that I was there, this past January, and that reminds me of the story I was going to tell. They have an ox cart. And so they had this ox cart with a bench on it, and the other pastor, Pastor Micah Ernst, he was traveling with me, and we climbed up on this ox cart, and we're riding on this ox cart, and they're leading this ox cart through the village. They had come out to where we would park the vehicle that would travel there, and got into the ox cart sitting on this, and they're pulling us along, and they're throwing all these flower petals, and leading us through the village back to the church that was going to be dedicated. And so sometimes it's something where they really honor us, sometimes to the point that I really wish they wouldn't, because it's not about us. There was one time when I baptized 21 children in one village. They had been waiting for a North American to come. And we tell them, you have pastors here, don't wait. Some of those kids were 4 or 5 years old. And they were waiting because we don't get to every village every time. And so it had been about 5 years since somebody had been to that village, and they were waiting. And we don't want that honor. We don't want that. You have pastors, have them baptize your children. The baptism is the same baptism. They consider it a certain honor, like the Archbishop has come. And it's very troubling to us. Do not regard us that way. You've got pastors here. Have your pastors baptize your children. Don't wait for us. Something could happen to your child. They've got a lot of ceremonies to demonstrate their respect and their gratitude for honored guests, and we do that and we recognize it. And I think Pastor Lilienthal made a comment back at lunch. What was that again? You said, is it what? How did you put that about refusing to be the honored guest? How did you say that?
Which is most disrespectful. Being the honored guest and doing what's there, or by not taking what you're being given as a guest.
So you've got to be careful about declining that kind of thing, because you can send a message that way too. And working in different cultures is always interesting. So let me come back to if I've got a couple minutes yet. How much have I got? 3 minutes. That'll be enough time. So 2 years ago, I was teaching in India about something called honor shame as a way of looking at your relationship with God and with the people around you. And here in the Western world, we tend to look at guilt and innocence. You look at your relationship in society, am I a lawbreaker or have I kept the law? And we judge ourselves by this external standard set up by a government that says, here's this written code, and you follow this code, and if you break it, there's going to be consequences. And so our relationship with society is based upon, am I a lawkeeper or a lawbreaker? Do I drive recklessly? Do I endanger people? Do I steal things? All of that is in this code written in the government laws. And we have a court system that says, here are the laws. You measure your life by how you measure up against those standards set by an authority. But there's another important, actually there are two different principles. One is called honor shame, the other one is called fear and power. Fear and power is found generally in tribal areas. Everything has a spirit. The rocks have a spirit. The river has a spirit. The trees have a spirit. And if I offend the spirits, the water may rise and it may kill me when I'm trying to travel on the river. A tree may fall over on me. You tend to find those in tribal areas, but surprisingly, that accounts for probably about 18% of the world operates that way. There's only about 20% of the world that operates the way we do. It's the Western world. Eastern world tends to look at honor and shame. And I look at my life, have I dishonored my family? Have I dishonored my community? And it's not measured necessarily by this external standard of a law written in a book. It's the way that we as a society exist. If you want to see how that's carried out, all you need to look at is the honor killings that take place in the world of Islam. A young woman for dating the wrong man. And certainly if she would have sexual relations with another man, the father and the brothers kill her because you have brought such shame on us. Even though killing is against the law, they will kill in order to restore shame before they're worried about the law and consequences of committing murder. It's about shame and how you deal with shame. By the way, our country is, even though our country should be guilt and innocence measured by the law, we're becoming a culture that's determined by honor and shame. You want to know how you see that? Cancel culture. You say the wrong thing, we shut you out. You will not have a voice in our culture anymore. That's cancel culture. And that's what's happening in our culture. We're changing. And you start to look at relationships with other people rather than laws that you live by. And where you have brought shame, shame must be taken away and honor restored. And the Bible talks about that. You remember from Genesis, and Adam and Eve were naked and they were not ashamed. And when they sinned, they saw that they were naked and they were ashamed. And they have to cover themselves. They have to cover the shame. Jesus, when he tells the parable about the banquet, and he says, you go and you take the one of highest honor, and someone comes and says, sit down there, that's for somebody else. And you are ashamed because now you're at the lowest seat at the banquet. And then he says, when you serve a banquet, don't invite your friends and neighbors. Invite the blind and the lame, those who are never invited to it. You look at other people and look at how you might honor them while the rest of the world treats them with shame. And the Bible is filled with those. You just look up the word shame in the concordance and you see how often the word shame shows up and how God restores the shame by giving us the honor of being children of God. So anyway, so Eastern culture tends to be more honor shame. We're always a blend of these, but Eastern culture tends to be honor shame. Western culture tends to be guilt and innocence. So we did the test in India. There's a test you can go through. Actually, if you want to go through it, you go to theculturetest.com. 25 questions. You answer them, you get 3 choices. One choice is always guilt and innocence. One is honor and shame, and one of them is fear and power. You go there and you answer the 3 questions, you get it all done. 25 questions, you count up how many you have of each, multiply times 4, and it'll give you a percentage. So I take the test and I come out at about 92% guilt and innocence, which is exactly what I would expect. And when you do it with Western men or people in general, from a Western culture, they'll come up 85, 90, 95. One pastor came up 100% guilt and innocence. We do this in India. They should be coming up with 80, 85, 90, 95% honor shame. That's what they should be coming up with. What do they come up with? 65%. Every single pastor came up with over 65% guilt and innocence. What does that tell you? We've been teaching them Western theology in a culture that looks at honor and shame. And we need to look at how do you present the gospel in an honor-shame context instead of guilt and innocence. And I said to them, what are your neighbors? And they said all of our neighbors would be in honor and shame. How are you going to reach them with your 65% guilt and innocence? We need to figure out how we're going to train to understand the mindset and the worldview that people have, because the Bible does talk about honor and shame. It's filled with it. But we are so used to guilt and innocence that we can't even change our way of thinking to teach honor and shame. That doesn't mean you ignore guilt and innocence, but it means you need to understand the people that you're reaching out to. Pastor Choi, my guest, is in Korea. Honor, shame. Honor is a very important concept.
Yes.
And we have a Western approach to Christianity that we need to re-examine. How do we teach the Bible that has honor, shame in it? How do we bring that out so we can reach people where it's more important that my shame be covered and less important that I am guilty from having violated some kind of code over here, because my relationships are what are important. My honor to my parents, my honor to my community, to my family. So, sorry, that got to be a little bit lengthy.
It's
but,
okay.
and then 2 more minutes? 2 minutes, thank you. You're very kind. In Spanish, we would say, muy amable, which means very amiable. Thank you. The other one is then this last time, when I went to India, we were going to teach apologetics. Apologetics is how do you defend your Christian faith against criticisms and the world that wants to dismiss the Christian faith. How do you do that? And I had all this material that I had prepared. But how had I prepared it? With a Western approach. The night before classes started, I went to YouTube and I said, I want to find a YouTube on apologetics to Hindus. And I went there and there was a 45-minute video by a man. He was actually a Methodist, but very conservative Methodist. Very conservative Methodist. He said, we've been doing work in northern India for 30 years. And what we found out is, in our apologetics, how you defend the Christian faith, we were answering our questions. We weren't answering their questions. And here I prepared all this stuff, and I was answering our questions. And so we had to go back and re-examine the whole course. And he said, if you want to do apologetics to Indians, you have to answer their questions. And it's boiled down to about 25, and the 25 can be boiled down to 15. And so fortunately, we were able to go through the 15 questions that Hindus ask about Christianity. Not that Westerners ask. We have so much to learn about how to do evangelism and how to defend our faith in different contexts. We sometimes go in so... Oh, by the way, why did all... Maybe I mentioned this. Why did all those Indians... Why were they 65% guilt and innocence? Because we taught them. Because we taught them. So a lot to learn. And it's fascinating stuff. I love doing it. Fascinating stuff. Thank you for the time to just get that off.
Okay, we have the rest of our business meeting, and I left off with, under old business. Would anybody like to talk about the youth convention?
Yep, I have a report.
Okay, would you please do that for me?
2023, around 200 participants came to Bethany Lutheran College on July 27th through the 30th. The theme was created based on Genesis 1:27, exploring God's good and unique creations of men and women, and featuring keynote speaker Bethany Lutheran College